Hey, everybody, and welcome to week 5 of CPT 202. We're going to be jumping into your introduction to web design. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This is kind of a weird topic to cover in a business course because we're not actually going to jump into programming. We're not going to talk about, any of those skills. You're going to need an independent course and multiple courses really to learn all about programming. However, I've noticed more and more lately that there's a requirement of some type of web design, layout, content management systems, content editing, content uploading. All of these things have popped up on different job descriptions. So I think it makes the most sense to talk about some of the basics and then get you some hands on time with one of the drag and drop editors that are pretty common out there. I want you to be comfortable in this space so that way if something pops up, one, you can say that you are familiar with basic web design, and two, then if something pops up in your career, you'll be able to be kind of comfortable with it, and there shouldn't be such a learning curve. So what is web design in the basic sense? You just finished up blogs, and your blogs actually were done on a web content management system that's used for the majority of websites actually out there today. A lot of them are WordPress based sites because you can manipulate that software to really give you a web presence. Now, web design focuses on the planning and layout. And so this is kind of the key things I want to talk about. How is somebody going to interact with your site or with what you're trying to say? And the big thing here is you're planning before you get onto a computer. Some people, if you're doing the site all yourself, you can jump in and just start getting things set up. If you're doing this for anybody else, a company, you really need to think through what you're going to do so you're not having to redo things. It's a big pet peeve of mine having to actually go through and undo the things that I've done. So the planning steps are really key. And so we're going to talk about some of those as well. So the design process. What does this look like? A lot of it starts on paper. And what I mean by that is a lot of people like to use index cards, post-it notes, and think about what their menu looks like, and then start to think about how content falls in. So I wanted to actually have you all kind of get familiar a little bit. So we've got this quick TED Talk I want you to listen to. So pause this movie, look in the lecture underneath, click, watch through that quick TED Talk, and then we'll get back to the lecture. Okay, so hopefully you paused and actually watched the TED Talk. Again, it's a good one. Let's talk about the things you need to do before you start designing your website. So a lot of the time, most people have some sort of content. It's very rare that you're going to have to spin up something brand new. So look at what you have to begin with. What content exists? What content has existed in the past? Is there any success? Can you look at the analytics? Can you look at the metrics? See what's there that you can start with. Starting from scratch is a lot of work. Unless it's something that's very minimal that you're going to be working on, similar to the assignment you're going to work on next week. So a next step is looking at competitors. If you're in the business space, you have some sort of competitor. What are they doing? You'll notice every couple of years, major trends in web design will change, and you've probably noticed this yourself. When you're looking on the web, things will just all of a sudden start to look different, and then everybody starts to look the same. Those design trends, kind of come up. Some of it's based on technology and software. Some of it's based on just aesthetics and kind of what's in. Mobile first is one of the biggest priorities because most people look at websites on their devices and not on a desktop computer anymore. So that's another big change in how things are designed. Then you need to set some future goals. What are you trying to accomplish with your website? And this is really key because if you're trying to drive sales, you're going to approach this in one way. If you're trying to get ad revenue, you're going to design a different way. If you're trying to get bookings, or have people sign up for something, that's a different approach. So you have to think through what are your ultimate goals and what you want to achieve because that is going to basically change how you're going to lay out your website. Looking at kind of the basics of site layout, I kind of have this chart here just to walk through the steps. Now, it doesn't mean you have to follow all these steps all the time. It doesn't mean you have to follow them in order. But this is kind of just a top to bottom approach that I've used with my web clients when I've been doing design work for them. So starting off with a branding statement or who you are is really kind of important. It kind of sets the ground of what are you trying to accomplish? What do you want communicated through the design of your site? Then there's usually some sort of variable featured content. You notice this, people might refer to it as a rotator. A lot of sites that just kind of cycle through main things. It's usually large text, video, photos. And that's something that you want to think about as well. There are some limitations to those. I know when I've done web design for Michigan Tech, a lot of the requirements there were really, really big photos. And we started to realize we didn't actually have a lot of high res photos we could use. So we had to go capture those. So that usually involved me sending up a drone and get some large wide shots of the buildings and different things that way because those technical requirements sometimes can be a limitation. Site navigation, super, super important. How are people going to navigate through your site? When you're working on your project, you're going to be setting a home menu, and it's very important that you do this so that people can actually get to the content on your site. So, one of those big things to keep in mind, site navigation, one of the big ones. Then you see usually services, offerings. Maybe this is a product listing. Some piece of the sales component. What needs to be out there? Now, for About Us, this has become more important because consumers really want to know who you are as a company, who you are as a person, and why they should spend their money with you or spend their time with you. So, having a good About Us section is really important. It's really a key thing to communicate your vision, kind of who you're about, and then hopefully, your customers or clients identify with that, and that's why they're going to make that conversion with you. Communications is another key. You want to make sure that you have some way for them to reach out to you. A lot of the time, this is social media. So you'll see all those icons, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, those types of links. And then the next one is an inquiry form. Contact us form. You've probably seen those on tons of sites. Maybe you've used them customer service wise. A place that's easy for people to leave their name, a contact, whether it's a phone or an email address, and then some sort of message. This is something you're going to be required to have on your site as well, just so you're comfortable with building out a contact form. Finally, there's the footer content. Most of the time, this might be a repetition of the menu. You might see, links to different like policies. A lot of that stuff gets shoved down there. Maybe there's a copyright date and the company name or the host is down there as well. Just a good way to wrap things up, especially policies. That's kind of the big one nowadays with cookie policies and tracking and all that kind of stuff. And especially if you're selling things, you have to have those down there. So this is kind of the top to bottom, what I would call checklists that I use when I actually construct different sites. Now, when it comes to options for design, we can kind of look at this from the big level. Again, this isn't a web design course. You're not going to be doing a bunch of graphic design work. You're not going to be doing a bunch of coding. That's not what we're focusing on. But you do need to think about what's your look. Is it going to be very clean? Lots of white space, very little elements or very little distractions. Is it going to be super accessible? So again, thinking through, should this be set up for mobile phones and not necessarily big screens on desktops? What about a minimalist design? Sometimes you've noticed some websites are very simplistic. They have very little things besides just the action items they want you to do. There's a call to action, maybe it's to book them or contact them, and then it's mostly just some pictures and that's it. Totally fine, but you need to kind of understand what you're going to use and really have a decision why you're going to use it. There's never really a right or wrong. It's mostly you just have to be able to justify the choices that you've made. So then we look at hosting. Now, again, this could be really complicated if you're building an enterprise level website. You need to look at how is this website going to live on a server. Some people choose to build their own servers. A lot of big companies obviously do this. Some small companies actually in the Houghton Hancock area have their own servers that they run for their website and for other things that they do in the business. Very technical. Obviously, you need system administrators. You're looking at a lot of money and a lot of people. But there are some web servers out there that you can use. So Bluehost, Amazon, GoDaddy, Gator Hosting, Google, Weebly, Squarespace. All these you've probably heard of some of these. And most of them require some sort of payment on a monthly level or a yearly level to have access to their services and to put a website up. As I mentioned before, in this course, nothing you have to do is going to require purchasing in this course. I've tried to make it all free and pick tools that are going to be free. So you're actually going to be using Weebly for your content management system for your assignment. Now, when it comes to front page design, that's a term you're going to hear a lot, or landing page. And I want to make sure that you just kind of understand this. Sometimes people struggle a little bit, but it's what they're going to see first. So a common kind of old saying was top of the fold. And what that really means is when your website loads in a normal standard screen, what do people see first? Usually it's a logo, it's navigation, maybe it's again one of those large carousel images or videos, but what do you want them to do when they see that? Those are things you want to think about on this design process. So, when you're building your websites, which are all going to be about you, what is that piece of information you want conveyed right at the top? What's the most important thing? That's usually what goes there. Accessibility. Now, I've mentioned this before, and this continues to be really, really important, which is why I keep bringing it up in all of my classes. Is you want to think through how are people going to get to your site? You know, if they're using a small cell phone screen, it needs to operate really, really well. I'm sure you've found some websites you've gone to that don't adjust for mobile. So then you're like pinching and having to zoom in and having to do all these more complicated things. You want to make this as easy for people as possible. It's why you've noticed if you've ever gone to a website and there's a phone number, it automatically links on your phone so you can click it and it'll call. That's an accessibility feature to make things easy so you're not having to copy and paste a number. So, how are people interacting with your site? What are they trying to do? Are you using mobile first design, meaning you're really focusing on those people on their mobile devices that might be tablets and cell phones? And then responsive web design. How do you build something that also works and looks really good on a 42-inch, 4K, 8K screen compared to something that looks and functions well on a small cell phone? All of these things, it's really important to understand and think through. Now, the nice thing for your assignment, Weebly does this automatically, does responsive web design. It makes it nice and easy so you don't have to stress and worry. And that's why these content management systems are so beneficial overall. Then there's always add ons. So, when you want to do something with your site, maybe you want to just kind of up the game and you want to start doing broadcasts of live video. You can embed a YouTube live channel into your website so people can interact with you. You can embed, Twitch streams. You can do all these different things. Do you want live blogging? Are you covering events? A lot of sporting events now you see on websites, people kind of continually give you updates on plays and scores and things. That live blogging and messaging is a different feature. It's something you can add to any website. How about a chat room, discussion board? These are things that are a little bit older style, but still really important if you're trying to create that community with your audience. And then obviously social media integration. And that doesn't mean just displaying your social media channels, but allowing others to share your content through their own social media channels. So think of that as kind of the share button that you see on all sorts of websites that immediately can pop up in Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all those different ways to send. These are all add-ons that you can, basically build out a full-fledged website. There's obviously a learning curve, sometimes a little bit extra money, but I wanted you to be aware of a lot of these things that are commonly now embedded into websites that you see from a lot of businesses. So I got another quick video here. What is a CMS, a content management system? You learned a little bit about this with WordPress and your blog because all blog sites are also content management systems. So watch this video quick, linked underneath the lecture here, and then we'll jump back in. Okay, so hopefully you watched that video. It broke down some of the basics of a content management system. We're going to cover those here. So why would you get a content management system? And ultimately, a lot of them come out of the box ready for you to edit your website without having to do a ton of coding. They're sometimes easy to install, especially on a server. You can have other people do it. A lot of the servers you could rent nowadays actually will do this for you for free. They'll put WordPress on there, or they'll put a different, Drupal or one of these other content management systems on there. You can start going right away. Drag and drop features for design. Weebly is one of those. So your design is going to be drag and drop from a menu. Super, super easy, very nice. And again, you don't have to have that extensive developer knowledge to be able to put this together. Now, there are some limitations. Your hosting goes up in cost because you have to have more complicated server. You have database issues. Sometimes, content management systems, they have problems. They have upgrades. Those go wrong. Hacking is a big one. WordPress, again, the number one, content management system used for websites, also the number one most hacked. So you have a lot of kind of extra security things you need to worry about. And also, if you're not coding from scratch, you are kind of stuck to the limitations that they provide you in their updates. So it is, beneficial to do a little mixture of both, but again, gives you a great, easy way to get a website popped up, extremely fast. So, I mentioned developers and coding versus content management system. Now, they go hand in hand. On my team currently, I have a web developer and he uses WordPress as our content management system, but he then customizes and builds custom pieces to work with WordPress. So, it's a great way to start. But also, you can build this out and have an entire web team that you have with UX designers, and you can have developers and really go all out. It is just a better starting place, in my opinion, than starting with just hand coding websites like I used to when I was little, with HTML and a text editor and making that turn into something that people can view on the web. So, what are some of the popular content management systems out there? WordPress, I mentioned a ton. You've used at this point. Drupal, Joomla, Weebly, Squarespace, all of these you've seen out there have made it very easy for anybody to spin up a website, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. To be 100% honest, if you really get to know Weebly for your assignment, you can actually crank through and complete the entire assignment in about a half an hour. There is a learning curve. You have to learn it, but the actual work you're doing is very simplistic, very easy drag and drop type of stuff. Um, you know, when we've talked about these different content management systems, it's good to kind of understand what you can get into. All of them usually have some sort of free option. They are going to always also give you upgrades. So as you ran into WordPress when you're using it, Weebly will be the same way. You're going to see Weebly. You can do things for free, but it's going to constantly say like, hey, you can get a domain name if you buy hosting, and oh, you can upgrade this. For your assignment, you will not have to pay anything. You do not need to upgrade anything. Watch next week's lecture. It'll walk you through. It'll show you all the tips and tricks so that you don't have to deal with paying for anything. But realize they're all companies trying to make money. So they are great starting points, and you can pay for these advanced features and really build out a fully functioning website for an entire business. And that's the key of this assignment and this week's lecture and next week's lecture, is so that you can understand these things and be able to do them in your future job. All right. I hope you enjoyed this week. Next week, you are jumping in to Weebly. You're going to be making your own website. I hope you're all excited. I hope this is something that maybe you haven't done before, and you'll get comfortable with it. And you'll know from that point out, you could pop up a website for free and super fast. All right. Have a great week.